My name is Miller, and I live in the bustling city of Seattle. I've always been passionate about writing, but my days are often crammed with meetings and emails. This constant rush leaves little time for my true love, creating stories. Every morning, I wake up excited to write but feel the weight of my daily responsibilities pulling me down. My workspace in a small cafe is noisy, filled with chatter and the sounds of coffee machines. I often sit there, staring at a blank page, feeling frustrated and overwhelmed. Lately, I've been struggling to balance work and my writing dreams. The ideas float in my mind like clouds, but they never seem to land on the page. At times, I feel like giving up, thinking I'll never get a book written. My emotions swing between hope and doubt, leaving me anxious and unsure. Will I ever find the time and focus to chase my dream? These thoughts circle my mind. Yet, amidst this confusion, a spark of hope begins to light my way. I know there's a method out there that can help me deeply engage with my writing. But first, I must overcome the barriers that block my path. I'm ready to start this journey toward transformation. I remember the first day I decided to focus on my writing. With my coffee in one hand and a notebook in the other, I felt ready to conquer the world. I had read about deep work and how it could help me concentrate better. My plan was simple: write for 2 hours without any distractions. I set my timer and took a deep breath, excitement filling my heart. But, as soon as I started, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a coworker, asking about a project. I felt a pull. Should I check it? I hesitated, telling myself it was just a quick reply. That moment, it turned into 10 minutes. The distractions only grew from there. Suddenly, I was checking my social media, scrolling mindlessly. Each time I tried to pull myself back, my other thoughts would zip into my head. What if I'm not good enough? Will anyone even want to read what I write? Soon, my 2-hour dream turned into just half an hour of weak writing. As I looked at the empty pages, frustration washed over me like a heavy wave. I felt lost, and doubt creeped in like an unwelcome guest. Was I being foolish to think I could write a book? I remembered the time I tried to write regularly before, only to end up feeling more tired than creative. Over the next few days, things did not get better. I stood in the cafe, staring out the window. My mind filled with old habits that seemed to cling like a shadow. I lived in a cycle of setting goals and then failing. Each time I failed, the voice in my head mocked me, "Why bother? You'll never change." I felt trapped and deeply frustrated, debating whether I should just give up. At times, I wanted to toss away my dreams and focus only on work, but something inside me sparked. One rainy evening, I stumbled upon a book at the library about focus and productivity. It was written by a famous author named Cal Newport, and its title caught my eye: Deep Work. I picked it up, hoping to find some magic in the pages. As I turned the pages, I felt a slow change. Cal spoke about how everyone gets lost in distractions but how we could beat them with simple strategies. In that moment, hope flickered. With each word, I found ways to make writing easier for me. One idea struck me: I should set smaller, clear goals instead of overwhelming myself. I started to see a way out of my struggles. To improve my focus, I promised myself to write for 15 minutes straight without any distractions. After all, small steps could lead me back to the bigger goal of writing my book. I may still feel fear, but as I closed the book that night, I decided to not give up. If I wanted to become the writer I dreamed of being, I had to face these struggles head-on. I resolved to transform my mindset just a little more each day, even if it took time. With this newfound determination, I felt a flicker of strength, whispering to me, "You can do this." Following my discovery of Cal Newport's book, I made a plan for myself. I wanted to feel in control again, so I decided to write for just 15 minutes every morning before work. I set my alarm 30 minutes earlier than usual, determined to carve out this time for my writing. The first morning arrived, and with excitement fluttering in my chest, I sat at my desk with my notebook open. As the minutes ticked by, I surprised myself. For the first time in a long time, I managed to write continuously for all 15 minutes. My fingers danced across the page, my thoughts flowing more freely. I wrote about a brave hero struggling with self-doubt, which felt like my own story. When the timer went off, I couldn't believe I had completed a whole section. I took a moment and read over my words, and a smile crept onto my face. It may have been just a small victory, but it sparked a flicker of hope inside me. Each day, I fought to maintain this habit. Some mornings were easier than others, but slowly, I began to see progress. There were days when distractions battled for my attention, but I focused hard, reminding myself of the small wins I'd had. Each time I was able to write, it felt like climbing a mountain. With every paragraph, my confidence began to grow, and I started to believe I could finish my book. Unfortunately, the road was not always smooth. One Friday, my supervisor called for an unexpected meeting at work. Big projects were piling up, and I felt stressed. I shared my fears about this last-minute meeting with my friend, Anna. "You can make it work, Miller," she said with a smile. "Just remember your morning writing. Stay focused." I left that chat feeling uplifted but also a little anxious. That afternoon, I stepped into the meeting room with my heart racing. As my colleagues discussed deadlines and big decisions, I noticed doubt creeping back. My thoughts danced around, reminding me of my worries. What if I'm not good enough? What if they laugh at my ideas? Nervously, I shifted in my seat. Just as I felt overwhelmed, I remembered Cal's advice about controlling distractions and anxiety. I took a deep breath, focusing on the fresh air filling up my lungs. With that calmness, I participated, sharing my ideas for a part of the project. It wasn't perfect, but I felt strong as I spoke. When the meeting ended, my manager even praised my input. However, as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I still wasn't fully where I wanted to be. The reminder of my earlier struggles lingered like a shadow. Yes, I had made progress, and there were moments filled with confidence, but what if my fears returned? What if I faced bigger challenges while writing, larger than just my daily practice? As I sat down that evening, I found it harder to write than expected. Doubts whispered once again in my ear. Would my work ever be good enough to share? Still, I knew I could not let go of the spirit of those small victories I had known. Instead of letting the fear take over, I opened my notebook and jotted down my feelings. It was here that I began to understand, growth isn't always a straight path. I realized that each tiny struggle meant I was learning, and lessons would guide me through bigger challenges ahead. The weeks passed, and I felt a growing sense of confidence in my writing. I had turned my mornings into a routine that allowed for creativity to flourish before my workday began. Everything seemed to be going well until one day, my manager announced a big project that had the entire team on edge. We were to deliver a presentation to top executives, showcasing our work. It was a crucial moment for everyone involved. My heart sank as I realized I would have to make a part of it. Instantly, the confident person I had become began to shatter into pieces. The pressure began to weigh heavily on my shoulders like an enormous boulder. We gathered to brainstorm, and with each suggestion I heard, doubt clouded my thoughts. They were smart and experienced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong at the table. As I sat there, listening to my colleagues, my heart raced. The voices in my head chimed in louder than ever. What if you mess up? What if you embarrass yourself in front of everyone? As the days toward the presentation approached, my anxious feelings grew worse. I found it harder to concentrate on my writing, and the sentences that had once flowed easily into my notebook felt trapped. As I tried to combine the two tasks, writing and preparing, I felt like I was drowning. Every time I picked up my pen, I was only met with blank pages and self-doubt. The urge to retreat into a shell was strong, and I began to consider putting my dreams aside again. The night before the presentation was the toughest. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to find sleep. Anxiety bubbled in my stomach, twisting and turning. My mind returned to my past struggles, the times I failed to achieve my goals. I could see those moments like a movie in my head, the countless times I gave up too soon, thinking I was not good enough. Now, those memories only fueled my feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. Finally, the dark moments crept into my mind, whispering the thoughts I had fought hard to believe were behind me. It was as if my old self had returned, grasping me tightly and demanding attention. "You can't do this," it said. "Just give up. You'll only embarrass yourself tomorrow." Feeling crushed by that heaviness, I took a deep breath and reached for my notebook. I began to write, pouring out my feelings onto the pages. Each word carved out space for my thoughts, creating light in the overwhelming darkness. But even as I wrote, fragments of fear lingered. I realized this was not just about a presentation, it felt like the very essence of who I was. As I struggled between fear and determination, I knew I had to overcome the challenge. The morning arrived, and I stood in front of the mirror, searching for encouragement. My hands shook as I smoothed down my shirt. I felt the weight of expectations pressed against me. "Just stay focused," I whispered to myself, recalling the lessons from my mornings of writing. I stepped into the meeting room with a lump in my throat, but I knew the moment was critical for both my work and my journey. Everything I had learned now hung in the balance as I faced this enormous challenge. As I stood before my colleagues, doubt coursed through me. My heart thumped loudly, and sweat coated my palms. When it was finally my turn to speak, I felt the words stick in my throat. All the preparation seemed to vanish, leaving only a heavy fear. My voice trembled as I started, but nothing I said formed clear thoughts. My mind buzzed with anxiety, remembering the whispers of my old self, "You can't do this." With each passing second, I felt smaller and further from the confident person I aspired to be. After my part ended, a knot of disappointment formed deep inside. I watched as my colleagues presented their sections with ease, earning admiring nods from those in the room. As they received praise and compliments, I shrank further into my seat. All the time I spent pushing myself to grow felt pointless in that moment. Why did I think I could succeed? Maybe it was all a cruel joke. The trail of effort I had blazed seemed futile, leading me nowhere I wanted to be. Later that day, I walked out of the meeting feeling defeated, wanting only to hide. As the weight of failure closed in on me, I called Anna, wishing her to lift my spirits. Sitting in my car, I listened as she picked up. "Hey, Miller. How did it go?" she cheerfully asked. I felt tears welling as I poured out my emotions, every disappointment spilling from my lips. "I'm still not good enough, Anna. I thought I was changing, but I've failed again." There was a long pause, and I thought I heard her contemplating her response. "Miller, you have to remember why you started this journey." That caught me off guard. Why had I started writing in the first place? I paused, memories of the night spent dreaming of telling stories flooded my mind. I remembered sitting in my father's old armchair, listening as he read to me. The adventures took me to places I never dreamed of going, and it was there that I discovered my passion for storytelling. "I want to inspire people, Anna. I want to write something beautiful," I finally admitted, a little light igniting within me. "That's your why," she said, her voice steady. "You can't let one setback decide your worth, Miller. Writing might not always be easy, but it's your passion. Just keep pushing forward." Her words sank deep, awakening something that felt dormant within me. I realized in that moment that true growth rarely comes without struggle. Every writer faces fear, every person encounters failure. It is a part of the journey of resilience. With renewed energy, I thought about the lesson I had learned through my practice: growth does not happen in a straight line. Instead, it twists and turns, reminding us that even setbacks can lead to learning. I hung up the phone with Anna, feeling lighter somehow. As I parked my car, I took a deep breath. All my doubts had not vanished, but they were quieter now. My journey didn't stop here. Instead of quitting, I would gather everything I had learned, every failure, and build on it. This challenge wouldn't define me, it would be a lesson learned. I sat down with my notebook that night, more determined than ever. Writing truly was a path to personal growth, and I was ready to continue down that road, one word at a time. After my conversation with Anna, a sense of renewed resolve washed over me. I realized I couldn't allow my fear to finish writing my story. The next morning, I approached my routine differently. Instead of letting anxiety take control, I focused on my growth, ready to confront any challenge that lay ahead. I returned to my desk while the sun peered through the window. I wrote down the key points I wanted to present and outlined my thoughts. This time, I didn't try to cram everything together at once. Instead, I broke down the information into small, manageable pieces. If I wanted to succeed, I knew I had to emphasize clarity over speed. With each point, I visualized how I wanted to deliver them to my colleagues. Over the next few days, I faced moments of frustration while rehearsing. Adrenaline built up inside me every time I practiced in front of the mirror. My hands shook, and I sometimes stumbled over my words. Yet, each time I practiced, once I made a mistake, I reminded myself that mistakes were part of learning. I took a deep breath and tried again, pushing forward without letting doubt hold me back. The nerves came rushing back, though, as the presentation day arrived. I wore my best shirt, stared at myself in the mirror again, and repeated my key points. I told myself it was okay to feel scared, but I also reminded myself of the passion that sparked my love for writing. This was more than just a presentation, it was another step in my journey of growth. I stepped into the meeting room, heart racing, and smiled at my colleagues. The room buzzed with energy as everyone settled. When it was my turn to speak, I noticed the eyes in the room. My voice trembled at first, remembering the doubts that had crept in during my earlier presentation. But I gathered my strength and glanced at my notes. I breathed deeply and let the words flow from my heart. Each explanation was guided by my passion for the work we were doing. I could feel Donald, the head of the project, nodding at my ideas. This spark reassured me, I was right to share my perspective. Still, I grappled with minor hitches. A question came from one of my colleagues, challenging my view. All my old fears washed over me again, but I remembered Anna's words. I stood firm and paused to think, letting the silence fill the air for a moment while I gathered my thoughts. I refused to let panic rush my answer. I considered my response carefully, and as I spoke, I drew from my love of writing, expressing my vision clearly. In that moment, I felt a shift within myself. Succeeding was not about perfection but resilience. As I made it through, I saw that it wasn't just about events happening seamlessly, but learning and growing through the process. When the presentation wrapped up, I felt an overwhelming rush of satisfaction. As I stepped out of the room, colleagues approached to share encouraging words. Their positive reactions melted the walls I had built around my self-doubt. I realized I had looked at the challenge through a new lens. I understood that facing fear required strength and patience, and every effort made mattered. I clung to that spirit and shifted forward into my writing journey, determined to embrace everything that lay ahead. After the presentation, I walked out of the meeting, my heart still racing with adrenaline. A swirl of emotions danced inside me, relief, joy, but also amazement. I had faced my fears and fought hard to push through. My colleagues surrounded me, offering praise and congratulations. Their words warmed my spirit. I realized I had not just managed to present, I had conquered something much deeper within myself. As I found my way back to my desk, I took a moment to let everything sink in. I looked out of the window, watching people walking along the street below. The noise of the office faded away as I felt a calm wash over me. I had stepped outside the wall of self-doubt that had held me back for so long. For the first time, I grasped the meaning of resilience. The feedback I received was kind, but more than that, I learned so much from this experience. I reflected on the journey that had led me to this point, from the tangled web of fears to my moments of inspiration while writing on my own. I understood that every struggle I faced made me stronger and more prepared for what lay ahead. It wasn't just about that single day of presenting but the everyday growth I had embraced, showing me the importance of consistently writing and practicing. I sat down at my desk and opened my notebook. I wrote about the experience. My words flowed freely, and I captured every part of the presentation journey, the ups and downs, the insecurities, and the triumphant moments. Sitting there, I recognized my habit of pushing back against my fears was now shifting toward embracing challenges instead. I looked back at my early attempts to write, recalling the countless times I looked at blank pages and felt defeated. That sense of hopelessness had almost taken over, but now, the pages almost felt alive, filled with possibility. I was transforming my old habits of procrastination into productive moments fueled by passion and focus. I realized success doesn't always fit a specific mold, it means different things for different folks. My success lay in my growth. Thinking deeply, I remembered Anna saying, "You have to keep pushing forward." It resonated with me more than ever. I could see that pushing through fear had been the true journey toward my writing dreams. I was not the same person I had been before the presentation. I felt stronger, filled with courage and determination. Looking ahead, I decided to incorporate my insights into daily life. I envisioned having more writing sessions dedicated to exploring my ideas and sharing them with others. The upcoming months inspired a newfound energy in me. I began to set fresh goals, ones that encouraged that deep work approach, where focus starts things with promise. A smile spread across my face as I thought about how far I had come. I could now face upcoming challenges with a different mindset. My fears no longer controlled me, instead, they drove me to find the courage to keep pushing through. My journey was only beginning, but this time, I felt ready and excited about what lay ahead. Every word I wrote meant more now. The path to growth was covered in struggles, but those struggles only added to the richness of the journey I was on. As the weeks flowed by, I began to notice a significant change in my daily life. My mornings transformed from frantic moments into opportunities for clarity and creativity. With my cup of coffee in hand, I sat at my desk, feeling excited rather than anxious. The blank pages that once haunted me now felt inviting, and I approached my writing sessions with a new, confident mindset. Distractions that once pulled me away from my focus seemed less potent. I applied the lessons I had learned about deep work, setting specific goals for each writing session. I broke my tasks down into smaller segments and allowed myself to celebrate each completed segment along the way. Instead of allowing tempting notifications from my phone to interrupt my flow, I placed it in another room. Each time I returned to my writing without yielding to temptation, I felt empowered by my choices. Work also took on a new meaning for me. I approached team meetings with assurance, sharing my thoughts openly. No longer did self-doubt creep up and force silence upon me. My colleagues noticed the change, they began looking to me for insights during discussions, and that recognition sparked joy within me. I took all the feedback I received to heart and used it as fuel to keep growing. During one brainstorming session, I noticed the difference in how my thoughts ran wild with possibilities. I felt like I could contribute meaningfully without grappling with fear. The fear that had once held me back was now a quiet companion, reminding me of what I had overcome but not dominating my thoughts. Instead of shrinking back when faced with challenges, I welcomed them, knowing each obstacle was merely another chance to learn. Outside of work, I began to carry that same energy into my personal life. I started joining local writing groups, surrounded by individuals who shared my passion. I no longer shied away from their feedback but embraced it as a gift. I also found myself writing more freely in my spare time, jotting down ideas and stories as inspiration poured forth from my heart. Friends began to notice my change, often remarking on my positive aura. "You seem so much happier lately," one friend told me. Hearing this made me beam with pride. I realized that my mental strength not only affected my perspective, but it also colored the relationships around me. I had something to offer now, an openness filled with creativity and hope. Yet, even on days that felt challenging, I was equipped with tools to handle the stress that came my way. Whenever doubts drifted in, I simply reminded myself of the journey I had taken. I had gone from a place of fear to one of courage, from silence to speaking my truth. I began reminding myself of my give and take with fear and passion, both part of my story now. As I walked through my days with an air of confidence, I felt my relationship with writing deepen. Each keystroke brought a sense of purpose, and the creative process became an essential aspect of my everyday life. Those early struggles had paved a beautiful way for growth, leading me to feel even more connected to my own voice. Learning to push forward allowed all the beautiful colors of my creativity to burst forth, and I was finally on a path filled with possibility. As I reflected on my journey during a quiet evening at home, I couldn't help but smile. The past few months had been a whirlwind of challenges, growth, and transformation. I sat at my desk, a warm cup of tea in hand, feeling as though I had newly discovered the strength deep within me. I gazed at my notebook filled with notes, thoughts, and stories that had blossomed throughout this adventure. It amazed me to think about how far I had come. When I initially sat down in that cafe struggling with a blank page, I was battling self-doubt and fear. Now, sitting there, I felt unstoppable. I had realized that the hurdles I faced were not roadblocks but rather stepping stones toward becoming the person I knew I could be. With each challenge, I had gathered more resilience and confidence. Every morning, I now welcomed my writing time as a precious moment to embrace creativity. It no longer felt like an obligation but a joyous part of my life. I had developed techniques to center my thoughts and stay focused, even during stressful times. These tools became a part of me, easily woven into my daily routines. Whenever distractions or worries threatened to pull me away, I gently reminded myself of my purpose and passion. In my workplace, I was treated as a valuable member of the team, someone whose input was respected and cherished. Through this new lens, collaboration felt less daunting. My ideas flowed more freely, and I no longer hesitated to share them. The interaction I had with my colleagues became enriching, as I learned from them just as they learned from me. Each time we engaged in discussions, my confidence soared a little higher. As I continued along this path of personal growth, I recognized an important lesson: it was not just about overcoming obstacles but about becoming adaptable. Navigating challenges became easier when I viewed them as opportunities for learning. There was strength in knowing that I could refine my skills and evolve with each experience. I was much more than a writer, I was a lifelong learner. What stood out most about this journey was how interconnected my personal life became with my work. The passion I had for writing began to shine through in everything I did. When I joined writing groups or shared time with friends, I did so with an infectious energy that inspired others. Friends told me how proud they were of the change in me, and hearing their responses warmed my heart. Looking to the horizon, I felt hopeful about what was to come. Although life would surely present new challenges, I now embraced them with enthusiasm rather than dread. I understood that with each hurdle, I had a choice: to confront it boldly or step back in fear. I chose courage without hesitation. As I turned back to my desk, I felt a swell of creativity waiting to burst forth. There were stories yet to tell, ideas still to explore, and dreams ready to transform into reality. This journey had taught me to believe in my voice, and I was eager to share it with the world. With a firm understanding of my capabilities, I was ready to walk hand in hand with future challenges, knowing they would shape me in ways yet unknown. Life was truly an exciting adventure, and I felt primed to embrace it wholeheartedly. The canvas of my story was wide open, waiting for my brush strokes of creativity and passion to paint the next chapter of my life.